What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Learning Culture Podcast. I am your host, Andrew Barry. This is a show about building cultures of learning inside companies. And you are back with me for season 5, where we're focusing on AI transformations. So what does it actually look like when AI transformation moves past experimentation and becomes part of how a company works every day? Today, I'm joined by Satu Salminen, the AI transformation lead for HR at ZoomInfo, a role she's held for over a year, which already makes her one of the early pioneers in this space. Satu's been building with AI since the early ChatGPT days, starting with a manager feedback coach and now helping shape AI-enabled HR workflows across ZoomInfo. In this conversation, we get very practical. We talk about how she identifies use cases, why documentation and workflow design matter so much, how to bring legal and HR into the process early, and what it takes to move from task-based agents to full end-to-end workflows. We also get into the human side of AI adoption, critical thinking, systems thinking, responsible use, and why leaders can't afford to wait on the sidelines. If you're trying to understand what AI transformation really looks like inside a company, not in theory, but in practice, this conversation with Satu is a great place to start. So with that, please sit back, relax, and enjoy my episode with Satu Salminen. Satu, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andrew, for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited for this conversation because you are the AI transformation lead for HR at ZoomInfo, and you've had this title for over a year now, which is pretty rare. So it kind of makes you one of the pioneers in the space, or makes ZoomInfo one of the pioneers in the space for creating the role. And so I want to start there, and I want to start even further back, because you told me that, I think it was about 3 years ago, you built an AI manager feedback coach. So I mean, 3 years ago, this is early, was like GPT-3 or something, maybe even earlier. This was as a non-engineer. Like, what got you into experimenting with AI at such an early stage?
Yeah, it was right after the first ChatGPT had been made available for the general public to use, and that's what really caught my interest. I was like, this is interesting. What can we do with it? I had this idea that what if I would tinker with it a little bit and come up with something that would help our managers to provide more meaningful feedback, because that's always a challenge. That's always been hard in all the companies that I've been in. I just thought that was a prime use case to use AI in a very practical way. And I started thinking about it. What could it look like? And immediately I started thinking about using some kind of a feedback framework that we were already using at ZoomInfo, which is the SBI framework for giving feedback. So I was thinking that what if I would, together with our engineers, back then I definitely had to reach out to our smart engineers for help. Now I can do a lot of stuff myself, but in those early days, what it looked like, I basically just reached out to one of our engineers and asked him that, hey, what do you think about coming up with a little bit of a prototype like this? Like, would you be able to help me if I would provide the content, the guidance? Would you be able to build it for me? Together with my team, we came up with basically like a script. How would it look like? What might the prompts look like? Giving it some scenarios of different types of employee manager feedback conversations. And then after a couple of iterations, we got a working prototype that we rolled out for our managers to test it out. So now when I look back, it's super simple, but in a way, a lot of that still stands. Like the way you build something like that, you first have to have an idea, a use case. What are you solving for? And then being able to explain that agent or tool. What's your role? What are you supposed to do? Giving it boundaries, examples, because it only knows what it knows. So kind of like you would if you would onboard a new employee, even if they would have worked in a similar role in another company, you would still have to tell them what to do here and what's our way of giving feedback, for instance, in this context. So yeah.
And I think a lot of people now who, you know, everyone's talking about agentic AI and this is sort of idea of, oh, it's like onboarding an employee. That's a learning you had 3 years ago. So you've had this benefit of sort of compounding by being an early adopter and by experimenting with it, which is obviously awesome. I'm going to come back to that, the individual side of it from your own experience, but let's also talk a little bit about ZoomInfo's embrace and approach to AI, and you know, carving out this role 13 months ago. That's like that's pretty early to the game. Can you sort of share a little bit more about how that came about?
Yeah, so initially I was leading our learning and development and talent management team, so which is my background. That's what I've been doing pretty much all of my career, being in learning and development and talent management. So just because of that role, I was already curious what we can do with AI. We're a tech company, and we have AI built into our products. So I was already an early adopter and a strong believer that AI will definitely not go away, nor is it something that's somewhere in the distant future, but it's right here at our fingertips. So I was an early adopter already, and I really kept encouraging our team to be constantly thinking about ways that we can leverage it in a meaningful way. Again, not just using AI for AI's sake, just because it's there, but really thinking about meaningful, relevant, safe ways to use AI in our work. So about a little bit over a year ago, our chief people officer asked me if I would step into this role to make it a little bit more structured, especially for HR that needs to really use AI in a very responsible way, because we're dealing with very confidential data. So it's definitely more than just turning on the tech. That's the easiest part, oftentimes anyway. But especially when confidential data and lots of regulations are involved, it does take a lot more than just buying something off the shelf, for instance. So yeah, that's how it came about. I've been enjoying the role.
Yeah. And so what's one of the first things you did in this role?
So I'd really mapped out different use cases to start leveraging AI in a meaningful way, looking at HR across the board. So, for instance, looking at what might be some really repetitive, tenuous manual workflows that aren't going to go away. We just keep on having to do that humans in this day and age shouldn't have to do. And then I also compared those use cases against their impact, like how long does it take for certain teams to complete those workflows, kind of like an impact matrix or volume impact matrix, 2 by 2, super simple. And then I had conversations across the function of, hey, what do you think? What am I missing? What else would you suggest? Where should we focus on first? Because there was definitely not a shortage of work to start tackling. It was more about prioritizing where do we start first, and then work our way up from there. So really prioritizing the use cases, that was the initial starting point. And I also did spend a lot of time educating myself, because I really wanted to gain a good enough understanding that I don't, because I was already talking to a lot of our engineers who are obviously more technical than I am. I don't have a technical background, but I've always been curious. So, and I've done some coding in the past, but definitely not to the extent that would serve me in this role as much as I wanted to. So I really took it upon myself to do a lot of self-studying and talking to a lot of people, completing some certifications, reading a lot of books. Yeah, just self-studying a lot.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the things that people in learning, like we're all naturally curious and learners ourselves, and
Yeah.
that's a big advantage in this. So let's talk about one of these workflows. You shared a little bit with me before, but I'm very keen to learn more about this Pathfinder career development workflow that you created
Yeah.
for SDRs. So how did that originate? How did you know that this was a use case worth investing in?
Yeah, so career development is always a tricky one because so many things going on. You know, employees might assume that they can just promote it just because they've been in a certain role for an X amount of time. Managers might not know how to quite handle those conversations, or they might not even know what roles are available. And oftentimes, folks might not even understand what options are available for them. So they might assume that just because you're in a certain function, that's all where you should or could stay throughout your career, or at least within the same company. So we really wanted to create something that gave them almost like a map to first of all understand where do they want to go in their career, what are some of their career goals based on their motivations, and then provide really clear guidance how to get there. So the way it looks like is that first the SDR goes into this career explorer agent that asks them 8 quick questions. It's like a quiz, mini quiz, essentially, in very plain speak. I really wanted to avoid any HR jargon because that's just not helpful if you're not in HR and you might not know all the terms, and that's not what this is all about anyway. So really asking in really plain speak, what are some things that you enjoy doing? What are some things that you don't really enjoy doing? And where might you see yourself in a couple of years? And giving them some options to choose from rather than having to write everything down. And then based on their input, the agent would recommend career paths for them. So it would give them top three career paths based on their input. And then obviously the SDR themselves has a full agency to select which one they would pursue. So it's literally just a recommendation agent. But what it does, it really gives them, first of all, that space and that time to think about, what do I even want to become in my career? Because oftentimes we just don't even stop and think about that. And then it gives them options to choose what really resonates most with them. And then after that, it gives you recommendations. Once they've selected the path that they want to pursue, it gives them very practical learning recommendations that they can start taking to pursue that career path. So that's how it works in a nutshell.
So, and then on the back end, do you have, because it's an AI that's ingesting all of these inputs from different SDRs, are you getting valuable patterns and themes that come out of that from a people perspective?
Yeah, so I think the key, maybe what I should also mention, the agent obviously only knows what it knows. So I did spend a ton of time training it about our all of our job profiles, because if it doesn't know what's available, again, literally here in ZoomInfo, rather than generate job descriptions elsewhere, it wouldn't give them meaningful recommendations to select from. So that's the key thing, that it's really relying on ZoomInfo specific job information. And then based on that, we're able to see what folks are selecting. But it's less about us monitoring the patterns or even what these SDRs are picking. It's more about a service for them to get support from this agent that's literally built for them, and also for their managers. That's, I think, also key, that this is not meant to be just a self-service, but also for their managers to continue to be involved in those career conversations. So the managers have access to everything that their SDRs do as well. And we've also provided them enablement and talking points to continue having those career conversations. So that's still an important part of it. It's just giving them a lot more support to have those meaningful career conversations and find the right path.
And do you maintain a continuity of thread, like of that conversation? So if I'm an SDR and I fill this out and then my manager has access to that, are we sort of updating the output over time, like through future conversations?
No, and we also want to keep all the conversations private, so that's by design, because we don't really even need to know, and frankly, I wouldn't even want to know. I think the key thing is really that the SDRs find value from it, and they're able to have those meaningful conversations. And they can even have an interaction with the agent. Like they can use it as a little bit of a chatbot for them, like a career coach of sort, to have some back and forth conversations. So that's not even something that we want to see. To us, it's a private conversation that we want to keep it that way. Like it would be if it would be a human to human conversation, it would still remain private.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But this is infinitely more scalable, and I guess also like standardizable, because you know the agent has all the right information, whereas like each manager may kind of have a different take on
Yeah.
career paths, and so yeah.
Yeah, and they just no one person could know all the different, roles, let alone what's required for each one of them, let alone be able to recommend, learning solutions that are really tied to that, learning or that career path that they've chosen. So I think the scale, yes, that's one key part, but also the amount of personalization that we're able to do. It would take quite an army of L&D folks and our sales enablement team, who we closely partnered with on this project, to provide the same level of service to everyone. So I think those two things are the key benefits for sure.
Yeah, and so speaking of that, like how did you talk me through how you pitched this internally? Like what was your business case to leadership? Like how did you get buy-in to do something like this?
Mm, so that was actually led by the HR business partner who supports this function. So the buy-in was already there. So that wasn't something that at least from my perspective we had to deal with. Maybe she had, but the buy-in was definitely there. And also the great thing with using these kinds of agentic solutions is that the added cost is somewhat minimal because we actually didn't buy anything off the shelf for this. We are relying our internally built AI platform for this. So obviously that had an initial cost to build, but that was already there for us to leverage.
Yeah, yeah. And so last question on this, like what and you could speak to this particular use case or any others. What have you learned about what makes a workflow, AI-able? Like what makes it work well with AI? What have you learned?
Yeah,
What principles have you taken from that?
yeah, I like that word AI-able.
Yeah.
Did we just come up with a new word, or you did? I think.
Yeah, I think we may have.
Yeah, I like that. Whenever it's something documented, so oftentimes when it's something repetitive, highly manual, that tends to be a really solid use case. But to specifically answer your question, how to make it AI-able, I would focus on the documentation part of it, and I think it's also key that folks don't just rush in and almost like AI, their existing workflows that aren't really as efficient, or they might not be optimized in the AI world. So I would definitely take a hot minute to assess, do we still need to do this in this way? With AI being in the mix. And then, if the answer is, actually, there might be a better way, then it's definitely worthwhile to spend a little bit of time first optimizing how might we do this work differently, faster, better, with less errors using AI, and then shift to that, and then start AIing the workflow. So I think that's one thing, and then also. Especially with anything HR related, legal related, anything with confidential information, anything that has to do with regulations. Before you start bringing AI into the mix, definitely have a conversation with your legal team. So the earlier on you bring them in, the better, because there are definitely lots of regulations how you can use AI, especially in certain HR workflows, and those regulations seem to just get tighter and tighter. There's the AI Act for EU that's taking place this August. So for any company operating in the European Union area, for all of us working in global companies, it certainly applies. So it's definitely worthwhile to consider regulation at first, not as an afterthought, because then you might actually waste a lot of effort, or have to rebuild from scratch if you don't do that in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. So very cross-functional, I'd imagine. In
Mhm.
the it sounds like, right, like the different stakeholders you've had to get
Yep.
involved. Would you say this has been one of the notable characteristics of your work in AI transformation, that it's very cross-functional?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. And forming especially a really solid partnership with the legal team, I think that's key, because they're your partners. So the earlier you bring them on, I think this goes for any kind of cross-functional work or any type of relationship based work that you do. But especially with this being such a new area and the regulations keep popping up and companies getting sued. There's that big lawsuit right now going on against some hiring discrepancies against a large tech company that I'm sure a lot of people are paying attention. So the earlier you bring them on, the better, because you don't want to surprise them that, hey, I need this now, because they've got other priorities too, like everybody does. And also that you don't get surprised by, oh, actually you can't do that because of X, Y, and Z. So yeah, forming that partnership with legal, your engineering team, product team, obviously HR team as well, depending on the use case that you are working on. I think that's key. And I really enjoyed partnering with all these different functions, because we all bring different perspectives into it. Because a lot of what we do is literally innovating something new that has never been done before. So that's always the case. Whenever you bring different perspectives in the room, that tends to increase into something a lot more innovative.
I love that you said that, because that's what we teach actually at Curious Lions, like different perspectives and how to perspective shift to understand things from different angles. So it's really great to hear how important that is. Um, let's talk about one more big success point, I think, of this whole the whole transformation work you've been doing at ZoomInfo. You told me that, I think, if the official stat is 96% of the company has adopted AI, but you said it's pretty much closer to 100%.
Yeah, I would definitely say that it's literally 100% at this point. So, um, everybody is using it in a different way depending on their role, but the key word is to use it in a responsible way. So that's one of the reasons why we have built our internal AI platform, that it's literally just for our employees to access and use, and also that we're able to build the needed access rules and role-based accesses for employees to use, that they are not, for instance, able to pull some data that they wouldn't be accessible anyway for them, no matter if they would be using AI or not. And also that all of our tools are right there, so it just makes sense, and it's something that I couldn't live without anymore.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. And so you've built that fully. So you've got, it's not like you've got Glean and, Claude licenses or something. You've built, maybe you're using these models, but you've built your own sort of harness, I guess, around your data.
Yeah, our engineering team build this kind of an AI platform that does leverage our the most common LLMs. So we do have enterprise licenses to all the key LLMs. So we chose not to build our own LLM. I know some companies are even doing that, but at least to me, the existing LLMs are already so good, and they just keep on getting better and better. So we've chosen to leverage them and have enterprise licenses for those. And then they've also made it really easy for those of us who are not even engineers to build agents with it. And now even what's called a micro app, which is essentially like almost like a website type looking internally, of course, looking at application that allows you to build dashboards, for instance, making it a little bit more visual. So that's been my latest endeavor to figure those out.
Yeah, and so what counts as adopted when you say 100% of the people have adopted? Like, how are you defining that?
How often people are using it. So we started from tracking monthly active use, and then we went to weekly, and now we're tracking daily active use. So it's the active usage measure, and that's easy for us to track because it's in our internal platforms.
Yeah. Another benefit of that. Let's talk about the people side of this now as well. You come from a learning and development background.
Mhm.
What are you seeing? Because it's great because you've got hundreds of people that are using this consistently. What are you seeing as the biggest capability gaps showing up? The gaps that you prioritizing to close?
I think going from those task-based agents to full-on workflows. I think that's the biggest, and I wouldn't even call it a gap, but more like an opportunity. And I say that because it's just not something that would have been realistic back a year ago, let alone 2 or 3 years ago. So I think it was just part of this journey to first start from those very task-based agents, like that feedback agent. I would even call it an agent, but kind of like a feedback tool. Since then, I've definitely built more sophisticated actual agents using our current AI platform. But I think where we want to really focus on next, or where we are focusing right now, actually, are really optimizing broader workflows, like our HR self-service workflow. So rather than just looking at different parts of it, like changing your home address, creating an agent for that, or benefits related questions, it's really automizing the whole workflow. As in, if an employee asks any kind of an HR related questions, that's the agent that they use, and then this HR agent is able to not just answer their question, but also perform the action for them. So that's the key change, and that's something that a lot of companies are still not quite doing. But I would say if I would start now, since there are lots of companies who are really getting starting, or at least getting really serious with their AI journey right now, if I would start now, I would probably actually jump over that phase of creating those that swarm of different agents for different use cases, and I would probably go big and start actually revising and optimizing full-on workflows, like looking at the HR self-service or recruiting or onboarding as an holistic workflow. And that's where most companies likely will need some kind of an external partner to help them with that infrastructure part. But I would also strongly suggest that once you, or if you do partner with an external company, definitely don't lose sight into what's key for your company and what's your way of doing things. So I would rather partner with the infrastructure part, almost like the back end, but really keep a very tight loop and grip on the context layer, and really creating the instructions for the agent, and defining the workflows. That part is really hard for a third party vendor to.
Yeah, and I'm going through this now with my team as well. And I feel like mapping out the workflows, like literally writing them out, seeing where the gaps are, adding more to it, is really, that's most of the work. Because after that, once you've mapped that out, right, like the AI can build the thing for you, but if you've not got that clear, are you any like practical advice you've got on that? Like one idea I've had is to have the AI interview me or my team, right? And so you can kind of just have it be Socratic, and it comes out like in that way. Anything else that you've learned that's worked well for mapping workflows?
Yeah, especially for Claude, I think that's one of the best ways to use it that way. That don't even try to give it everything from the get go. But I would definitely spend some time giving it, whether it's Claude or any other tool, giving it at least something meaningful to start with. So giving examples, I think that's a great way to really help the AI tool to understand what does great look like, and also what does not so great look like. I actually like giving it both. So what has served me well, at least with my use cases, is that I actually spend almost an equal amount of time telling the AI tool what to do, like what's your role, what are your goals, what are your key tasks. And then also spend almost the same amount of time telling it what you're not supposed to do. So first of all, if an employee asks this, do not even try to give them the answer. Instead, direct them to this person, for instance. Or one thing that I always put into my system prompts is if you don't know the answer, do not guess.
Yeah,
Instead,
don't make it up.
acknowledge that I don't
Yeah,
know, or direct the user to
yeah,
again another person, because
yeah,
these AI tools, like humans, they want to be helpful, and sometimes they made a wrong judgment call by just making a guess, as in hallucinating. And I also reduce hallucinations, or try to reduce hallucinations as much as possible, by really grounding the agent on its source files, like where is it pulling its information from, for instance, or also restricting its access to internet, because I can't control what's in the internet. No one can. So once you let it go there, yeah, you can't really control where it's getting its data from. So most of my agents, they have no web access at all. And those who do, if it's like really, really needed for their purpose, I might give them only certain websites that they should access. So those are a couple of tips that have at least served me well. And then obviously testing, like always test before you roll something out for others.
this is great. This is so practical. And yeah, it's so much sort of the systems thinking is so important here. Think about what are the inputs, what are the outputs, how do we know that the outputs are right? Like, this is really great. I want to switch a little bit to the role of the individual contributor. It's a big focus area for us, but I mean, I'm also seeing I don't you I'm not you probably manage people as well, but I imagine it sounds like, especially from this conversation, you have a lot of individual contributor work as well. You're building stuff, and I think this is true in most companies. You get a lot of player coaches now, and they're building. Obviously, the individual contributors themselves. Um, how are you equipping the builders? And I'm not necessarily just technical engineering builders, but anybody who's creating in the knowledge work. What sort of skills and capabilities are you equipping them with?
Yeah, and I am actually currently an individual contributor. So even though I've been a people
Oh, you
manager
did?
for
Okay.
10 years or
Yeah.
so that's a key shift as well. So I'm
Yeah.
literally a builder. But even when I was a people leader, I was still really hands on, not in that micromanagement type of a way, but really hands-on, as in like actively working in projects and building stuff with AI. So I think that's more important than ever, and also for people leaders to really role model that they're building and learning at the same time, because I think this is a really unique situation for people leaders who typically become people leaders in the in the space that they're already more experienced in than their direct reports. Now that's certainly not the case with AI. Many of their direct reports might be actually way more advanced with using AI, or they might be all at the same level of knowledge. So because this is so new to so many of us, so I think role modeling that intellectual curiosity and that growth mindset goes a long way. But I guess to answer your question more directly, what skills do we really emphasize? I think critical thinking is more important than ever, because now you can so easily get a very fancy looking artifact, and it can be totally wrong. So, and based on research from Anthropic, apparently users tend to trust output that's coming from AI. That's very neat and visually appealingly looking. They tend to trust that even more. So that's a problem if folks just take it as face value that oh, it must be true. Um, so I think critical thinking is more than more important than ever to really always be validating the output because you can't outsource accountability. So just because you use AI, and you totally should, that's definitely not what I'm saying that you shouldn't use AI. You absolutely should whenever it makes sense, but you need to use it in a responsible way. So, and again, you are accountable for your work, whether you used AI to help you get to that outcome or you didn't. So, so I think validating the output that's key. I do that, but I also take the steps that I shared earlier. So really spending a lot of time upfront to minimize the risk of errors, to minimize hallucinations, giving it those boundaries. And then I also validate the output. So I think that's one thing. And then systems thinking, like we were discussing, I think that's such a good skill to really be thinking holistically, what almost like the domino effect of different workflows and thinking about how work gets done and really innovating how work could get done now with the help of AI. So having that intellectual curiosity and that growth mindset along with that, I think that's the third skill I would add for sure.
And how are you going about diffusing this skill set across the org? What's your approach to it?
So already about 3 years ago or so, we started doing AI enablement. Back then, it was more like prompt training, as was more popular back in the day. More detail oriented, like more like do this, even like slide based, more like traditional enablement, I would say. But now we really moved more towards hands on keyboard types of working sessions, essentially. So it's less about teaching you about the tool itself or how to prompt, but more about how might we solve this specific issue or this how might we tackle this opportunity, and often doing those with intact teams so that we can actually really talk through a meaty problem or an opportunity that they have within their workflows. So that's definitely been the shift. We still offer the basic training. We have LinkedIn Learning that has a lot of resources and many of our internal resources, but that's how I would describe the shift from back from 3 years ago to where we are now.
Yeah, I love that. Back in the day, 3 years ago. Okay, my last two questions are they kind of paired off. So I'm going to ask you the first one. It's so the one side of the coin is what's something you haven't figured out yet? Like what's the biggest open question you're working through right now?
I like that question. Um, what I'm constantly thinking about, what's the next use case? So it's less about what we haven't figured out yet, but almost like what's the next thing to
What else is
tackle.
possible?
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but also on the more technical side of things, as the tech keeps on evolving so quickly. And now we just went live with our agentic workflow for our HR self-service, for instance. Yet we still have lots of really helpful agents. So how do we pair them all together into a very cohesive employee experience? So we're definitely getting towards that, but I think that's something that we need to keep an eye on constantly because there are new solutions popping up left and right. So how do we really manage the employee experience, that user interface? That's easy to do in our internal AI platform because everything is literally there. But as we start exploring a little bit outside of it as well, how do we connect everything together? So, because for instance, that HR self-service workflow, that's all happening in Slack, where all of our employees are pretty much living it. We don't really use email as much.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like a sort of an orchestration layer. Like how do we
Mm,
now start
yeah.
to connect all these great use cases that we've
Yeah.
you've been building. Yeah. No, that's an interesting one. And then my final question is, what's one thing you wish every leader understood now about this moment we're in?
Don't wait. That's what I would say. Just start from
I love
somewhere.
that.
I do worry about folks who, because I still keep hearing folks, especially who are in regulated industries, that it's too risky to use AI.
Yeah.
It's to me, it's too risky not to use it at this day and age because your competitors are using it. So obviously, you need to find a safe, responsible way to use it. But by now, I think it's definitely possible to make some meaningful strides to get there. And I think especially since you asked specifically for leaders, role modeling that we're all learning together. I think that's the worst thing for leaders to do in general is that they might pretend that they have all the answers or that they know everything. So really being a little bit vulnerable and really showcasing that growth mindset as they're learning together with their team and asking those questions like, what if, what might we be doing differently? So I think those are the things that come to my mind.
Well, that to me is the story we've just heard from you. Kind of starting 3 years ago, tinkering with the feedback coach, and then working through these past 3 years with all these different use cases. You've modeled that yourself, and I think you can see it in 100% adoption. Not that you were the only one responsible for that, but it's something that at the company that a lot of people have embraced, and but also honest enough to say like, hey, we're still figuring it out, and that's that intellectual honesty and curiosity. So yeah, this has been such a great conversation, Satu. I'm so glad that I was recommended to speak to you because I can tell you think about this very deeply. So I really enjoyed this conversation, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. This was fun. It feels like we're living in the future, right?
It does. Amen.